Hey, welcome guys. Bob here from bobsplumbingvideos.com, and what you're looking at right here is a shutoff valve that feeds a steam radiator. Now here on the East Coast, we are still in steam country, and a majority of the homes are heated with steam heat. That is, we have a boiler in the basement that boils water, it turns to steam, the steam gets distributed throughout the system and then comes in through these shutoff valves into the cast iron radiators, and we have cast iron radiation here galore. So what happens after 30, 40, 50 years, these valves actually will leak, and they will leak here at the bottom between the union joint here, and they will leak out of the stems here, the packing stems here at the top. Now this is a brand new valve, but let me just I'm going to slip this out of the way a minute here and push it back. I'm going to show you what they get to look like after a while. And this is a valve that I recently pulled out of someone's house. And this is basically what they look like when they get all old and painted and ratty looking. And as you can see, I already cut this one out, and I'm going to walk you through the process on actually how to cut this one out. You know, people are under the misconception that they can just put a wrench on here and turn these things, but after being on there for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, they get kind of steam welded onto the pipe, and they are not going to come off as easily as you may think. You just can't put a wrench on these because it's absolutely not going to turn. And unless you know what you're doing, unless you know the tips and tricks of the trade, you're going to really be sorry you attempted to do a job like this yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out some tools to show you that you're going to need if you're going to attempt to do something like this. And then we're going to go to the bench, and I'm going to show you exactly how I cut this one out. You know, I did this a few weeks ago, and there's a process, and it's very easy. I mean, when I change these valves out, I tell you, you know, 20 minutes I can have a valve changed out. But I know people that have attempted this, and they've actually spent all day, and they've caused more damage than what it was worth. So stand by. Let's go to the next segment. I'm going to lay out some tools, and I'll see you in the next segment. Okay, here we are at the bench, and I laid out a series of tools that I always have with me. You may or may not have them with you, but I mean, I feel these are essential. I'm not saying that you have to go out and buy every one of them, especially after you've been doing it 35 plus years. You kind of find ways to improvise if you don't have everything here. But these are tools I feel will help you get the job done easier. We have on the left there, we have a hammer. Next to that is a spud wrench, very important tool to get the spud of the radiator valve screwed into the radiator itself. We have a cold chisel. Next to that, we have a couple of caping chisels, which I'll explain to you in the next segment what they are, what they do. I have my hacksaw up against the radiator there. I have my pipe joint compound. I have my roll of Teflon tape. I have a straight 14-inch wrench. I have an offset 14-inch wrench, and I also have a specialty wrench which allows you to get in straight on. This is a tool that I bought a few years ago, and it comes in handy, but not really necessary, but it does come in handy in certain situations. Next to that, I have a pair of channel lock and the all-important mini hacksaw. That's a Lennox mini hacksaw. Very important when cutting the one end of the spud out of the radiator, which I will go into detail in the next segment. So these are the tools I feel that are going to help you get the job done rather easily. And let's move to the next segment, and I'll show you how I actually took that old 1-inch radiator valve off a few weeks ago. And so let's get going without any further interruption. Okay, so here we are at the vise, and what you're looking at is that valve I took off a few weeks ago. And first thing we do when we go to change one of these puppies is to shut the steam off. We're going to shut the steam off, we're going to shut the switch at the boiler, or we're going to shut the thermostat down. We don't want live steam in the system. And in this particular case, on this particular valve, at the time I did this, this valve was actually facing this way. And as you can see, what I did was I made a diagonal cut here with my hacksaw. I actually took my hacksaw And let me bring that up here, and I'll turn this around a little bit. And I actually went in here, made a diagonal cut, and what I did is I cut as far as I could, but I didn't get into nicking the threads on the nipple down there. I got very, very close, but not quite all the way through. Once I did that, and I'm going to turn this for you a little bit here, you're going to see this. You can actually see where I put my cold chisel. Now I take my cold chisel, which is right here, and what I end up doing is I'm going to put that right in that slit I made, and the idea is we're gonna hit that, and we're gonna pop that, and that brass is gonna pop open. Now, what you don't want to do, guys, you're not gonna want to. You don't hit this head on. You don't hit this straight on because you'll smash that nipple coming out of the floor. And trust me, you don't want to do that. You want to get down on an angle. You put the corner of your chisel in there, and you whack that, and boom, that thing's gonna pop open. And when that pops open, that's going to release the actual brass, the valve from the piece coming out of the floor, and you'll be able to take that off, whether it be by hand or with a wrench or with a pair of pliers. The next thing I do in the sequence, and bear in mind, I do this first. I do not disconnect the radiator. I do this first. This is the first thing I do. While it's still connected to the radiator, I make my cut, I pop it, then I move on. The next step is we have to get this the spud section of the valve off, and sometimes these do turn, in which case I'll put my 14-inch wrench on here and I'll counterclockwise try to loosen it. If it doesn't turn, again, I come in with my hacksaw, and I'm going to make, again, a diagonal cut. And in this case, we make the diagonal cut all the way down. You can hit the threads of the valve. It makes no difference because we're going to change the valve. And then again, I come in with my chisel here, and I'm gonna pop this. I'm gonna pop it, and that's gonna pop open. And at that stage, I'll try with my wrench, or I'll try with my channel lock pliers, and we're gonna loosen this. And just a word of caution: you want to get a little bucket or a little pan, because when you disconnect this, there's probably some water inside the radiator, and that water is going to trickle out. So might as well catch it in the pan, then catch it on the floor. And at that stage, we can move on and remove the valve, and whether it be with a channel lock or a pair of pliers, and we'll start to turn this, and that's going to come off. And that's how easy it is, guys. That's the best way to remove these things. I'll tell you right now, what a lot of people do is they go in there, they get their wrench, they start with a 14, it doesn't move, then they go to the 18, then they go to the 24, and then they get a 24-inch wrench with a big piece of pipe on the end, and they go, you know what, I'm going to get some good leverage on here, and I'm going to take this off. It's going to come right off. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You are going to snap the fittings below the floor. Those cast fittings below the floor are going to pop, and you're going to end up for a huge plumbing job. We're going to have to replumb the radiator now. Cut the floor open, replace all the crack fittings, and replumb it. These valves are not going to come off after being on for 30, 40, 50 years. They are steam welded onto the pipe. So, guys, it takes me 20 minutes to change a radiator valve. Record time. And if you follow what I'm telling you, these will come off. So we're going to take this off. What we're going to do is we're going to check the piece coming up out of the floor. We're going to get our Teflon tape, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds. Keep it as close to the edge as you can. This way you won't see it at the end when you screw the valve on. After we have our Teflon tape on there, I use my Mega Lock, which is a Teflon impregnated pipe joint compound. And then we're going to get our new valve, and our new valve is going to screw on there as such. And then what we're going to do is move on to removing this end, which is still in the radiator, or at least the old one, not this one. This is a new valve. So I will show you in part 2 how we go about removing this end from the radiator. So stand by. I will see you in part 2.